Good morning, everyone. Today, the month of November and December pretty much is full of major feast days. Today, tomorrow, and for the coming days, we have every single day a celebration of a major saint of the church. But especially today, we celebrate the memory of Saint Nεκτάριος of Αιγίνη, a man who lived at the last part, the second half of the 19th century, and he reposed in 1920. When we go to church history, we see some times of growth and some other times that the church seems to be, and the people of God seems to be at a low point. What happened in Greece was that we were liberated and gained back our independence from the Ottoman Turks in 1830. We had, for a short period, a governor there, a Greek governor, and then it was imposed in Greece that we should have a king that would come from Germany. So this from the region of Bavaria, more specific. Why I mention this is important to understand the context in which Saint Nectarios gave his testimony and lived his conduct. Greeks, having such a strong civilization and even stronger faith, they maintained their Orthodox faith, and of course, through their Orthodox faith, their national identity, even though they were 400 years subjected to Muslims. When the German king came and brought his whole group together, the Germans, as all Europeans, treated Greeks as inferiors. The Europeans thought about themselves that they were the cultural inheritors of ancient Greece, and that the contemporary Greeks had nothing to do with the ancient civilization. So instead of keep learning about our ancestors and about our history the way that we had been learning up to that point, the way that we, through that education, we have maintained our faith and national identity, now we had the Germans writing the new narrative, new school books, new education, and teaching us Greek history or Greek civilization the way they understood it. This is why, to this day, you will see that Greek people, they do not trust something unless the foreigners approve. We do not admire our ancient civilization. We admire the admiration of the foreigners. That's what we do. And there are few people in Greek history that they strove to bring us back and make us believe in ourselves. But this extends Greece and the cultural issues or historical problems of Greece. We're talking about Saint Nectarios, who lived in the second half of the 19th century and early 20th century, when the theological schools in Athens and Thessaloniki had professors who had been educated in Western Europe. They brought their Protestant education to Greece, and they thought that everything traditional Orthodox was a product of villagers, of uneducated people, not as elegant as their Western education was. And it seemed that this thing was about to prevail. And in this environment, there was a Saint Nectarios, a man who was born in Silivria, that's Eastern Thrace, currently occupied by Turkey, From there, he went to Constantinople, he was educated, he was taken to the Patriarchate of Alexandria in Egypt. He was consecrated Bishop of Pedapolis, one of the major cities in Lydia. And from there, he was falsely accused by some rivals that he had within the church administration. Although he did not do anything to anyone, apparently some people did not like him and put all kinds of false accusations to him. And this is why he had not to be deposed from his episcopal position. He remained a bishop, but he had to go back to Greece. He took a position of a traveling preacher, a priest that would travel and preach, that were called hierokyrix, in Evia, in a place that no one wanted to go. And he spent years doing that. After so many years, his education was recognized, and they placed him as director in Rizarios Ecclesiastical School in Athens. Now, Rizarios was a Christian academy that aimed to be something of what Protestant Christian academies aim to be. But they made the mistake, these Protestant-minded people, to place as director there Saint Nectarios. And Saint Nectarios took Christian academy and converted to an Orthodox Christian academy, that is to say, to a real Christian academy. And he started bringing back Orthodoxy. He met with many difficulties and many oppositions. Recently, there were published the letters that he had to exchange as director of this academy, and they're very interesting to read and see what this man struggled with. At some point, to give you just one example, the students were asking to get permission, instead of doing all kinds of gymnastics that no one cared for, to play soccer. There were Greek boys that they wanted to play soccer, and he allowed that. And the board of the committee came after him, accusing him that he brings peasant traditions and practices because no one in the good society plays soccer. Why the students of that academy should play soccer? What he did, he took another fellow clergy, another canonized saint of the church, Saint Gervasios Paraskevopoulos, and they formed teams. And Saint Nectarios was the goalkeeper in one team, and Saint Gervasios Paraskevopoulos was the goalkeeper in the other team. Maybe that was the one and only soccer game in history with no foul language used, probably, with two saints being the goalkeepers. At the end of his life, he retired from that academy and he went to the island of Aegina, and then he founded a convent of the Holy Trinity. To this day, you can find the Church of the Holy Trinity, even though nobody knows the church and the convent of the Holy Trinity. Everyone goes to the monastery of Saint Nectarios, as they call it today. He spent there the rest of his life, but sadly, the accusations never stopped against him. He died defamed. When he died, his body was about to be transferred from Athens. He died in a hospital in Athens from prostate cancer. And his body was about to be transferred in Aegina. They didn't have anywhere to place and take the body, so they thought he was a bishop after all. A church would be a suitable place to leave the body overnight. But the local clergy did not give permission for the body to be accommodated in the church, so the body in the casket had to stay overnight outside the church until the next day when the ship was sailing to take it to Aegina. even though he died defamed, miracles started happening immediately after his death. And when I say immediately, upon reposing his soul, the person lying next to him in the same hospital room, he was paralyzed and his health was restored. Saint Nectarios, and here I'm going to the low point of history that turned around. Even though everything and everyone pretty much was against him, he changed the history of modern Greece. Everyone who encountered or came in contact with Saint Nectarios, either clergy, teachers, school teachers, university professors, artists, everyone who came in contact with him, they had a great impact later on in the disciplines in which they practice. He was the light. He was the light that shed to everyone coming towards him, and he impacted modern Greek history, as I said, because that Protestant notion of the intellectuals turned around. And all of a sudden, Greeks started to realize that Byzantine iconography is the real wealth that they had, so they didn't need to make the caricatures that they make in the West or in other Orthodox traditions. You don't need to mention it here. Now, speaking about the West, that doesn't mean that he was anti-Western or that he opposed everyone else. He died in 1920. 1920 is before the ecumenical dialogue started. And even though there was no such thing as dialogue with other churches, he had sent 2 letters, not one, 2 letters to the ecumenical patriarchate, asking the patriarch to consider union with the Roman Catholic Church. In these letters he writes that we have seen the 2 churches from the austerity of the doctrines. It is about time to approach our Roman Catholic siblings with love. His life, his case, is a very, very interesting case, because if we go back, we will see that he was not the only one persecuted from outside the church, but from within the church too. We can find many cases like Saint Nectarios. Gregory Palamas was the same thing back in the 14th century. John Chrysostom was the same case back in the 4th century. But with Saint Nectarios is something different. It is a man that lived in the 20th century. It is a man that his life, the circumstances of life, are more applicable to us. He is the monastic, and that's one more reason to love him, that he established in the monastic rule of the convent that the sisters of the monastery should have coffee twice a day, not just 1 coffee a day. What a great saint. What a great saint. And having said that, allow me a little admonishment here and say that it is a sin before the living God to leave a priest without coffee on Sundays. Just saying that. So may Saint Nectarios, that light that shone through him, the light of Christ, be the one that he will help us redirect our lives. Today, we think of all the challenges that we struggle with, and we consider and we try to calculate and say, this is what needs to happen, or that is good if it happens. What we need to happen is to direct our lives in such a way that we will attract the grace of God like Saint Nectarios did. And then we won't need to worry about anything, because everything will be taken care of by the Creator and Sustainer of everything. Amen.